welcome to another bonus episode of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, strategies, and streamers for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line, all the way from sunny Toronto, Ontario, Canada, North America, it's the one and only Manacymbal, aka Zach Ryl. You've probably seen him, heard him. We can't get away from him. He's everywhere. Zach, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, hi. You might remember me from such MTG parody songs as When I Think About You, I Aether Mages Touch Myself, and Bolt the Monkey. Hey, how you doing, Stan? I don't feel like I'm that, prevalent. But it's hard to have a gauge on yourself, I suppose. Maybe within the modern landscape, I'm pretty all over the place.
Zach, you are omnipresent. It's impressive, actually. You're one of the hardest working people in Magic the Gathering right now, I feel like.
Well, I think that big Twitch leak we just got would say I'm not getting paid enough for my hours then.
Well, who is? Who is? So for those of you who might not know Zach, he's a co-host on the Serum Visions podcast. He streams as Manacymbal on Twitch. He also makes parody MTG music videos. You do a lot of stuff.
I do a lot of stuff.
What did I miss?
Well, I've got the newer show called This Week in Modern.
Oh, that's right. You're also a journalist, broadcaster.
Yeah, I'd like to say that's a journalistic endeavor, as my stream has been since the beginning, which I'm sure we'll touch on at some point. And then sometimes on stream, I do one character called Randy Rootwalla, who's the world's first ex-pro wrestler turned Magic streamer. So that's something that exists. So, I haven't branched out into any other characters yet, but that's always a good time.
Well, a good character takes a long time to develop.
It does. I mean, that one...
workshop them on stage.
It took me like 6 weeks to actually, like, from the beginning of thinking of the idea to realizing it. And it's one of those things that once someone prompted me with something on stream to mention it once, people would start, like, poking at me about it. And eventually I just was like, all right, I guess I'm just doing this.
And we're grateful that you do. At the start of all of these bonus episodes, we like to kick off with a little section you may have heard of called Inside the Grinders Studio. And what I have for you are 5 lightning round questions that you can answer in as little or as much detail as you like. So it could be a one-word answer, or you can provide context if you choose. And I'm going to kick off the first lightning round question just to get to know you a little bit. Zach, what's your favorite Magic card?
That'd have to be Forgotten Cave. No, Snapcaster Mage. It's definitely Snapcaster Mage. That's been my pocket answer for a long time. I don't know why that is. I mean, I love casting Snapcaster Mage. It was so Innistrad came out while I was in university, and I was on a bit of a break from Magic, and I just remember seeing this thing and being like, this is busted in half, but never really playing with it. And when I finally came back to Modern after that break, or came back to Magic after that break, I didn't have enough disposable income at the time to buy into a blue deck, so working towards owning my first set of Snapcaster Mages was like a big deal for me. And kind of saving up and getting them one at a time. And then you had to get the blue fetch lands, and that was a whole thing. So I still have those 4 currently sitting in my binder, as they're wont to do, alongside the 4 cryptic commands. But there's just something about it. I love picking it in Cube. I love playing it in any format that it's been legal in. And I was very devastated that they didn't reprint it into Standard. That was not a fun prank for me.
Well, they still might. Crimson Vow, just around the corner.
It could happen.
Maybe Snapcaster's getting married finally.
Tie in the knot.
What's your least favorite Magic card?
I think it's a two-way split between Lava Dart and Monastery Swiftspear. I'm never going to live down the horror period of blue-red tempo or blue-red prowess and mono-red prowess being sort of very prominent decks in Modern. Just the number of times I died on turn 3 was not my favorite.
Yeah. What happened to those decks? Sidebar. I'm sure you've noticed, like, prowess, it's present. We see it in leagues, but it's just not really a competitor anymore. Is it just because of all these chalices in the control decks?
Yeah, you know what? You'd have to do a lot. I think you'd have to go play the deck and see what's killing you. In the beginning, I would have said one of the decks that was a problem was the food variations, which obviously are not super popular right now. So that's not really the problem, but it would have been in the beginning. And I mean, when we look at the top tier, I can't imagine Hammer Time is a good matchup. And you could try to fix it with sideboard cards, but just like everyone else, you're probably not gonna get there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I really am not. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, I think I saw someone play. I think I saw someone streaming run into a blue-red prowess player yesterday and die. So it like so many things right now in Modern, and what I love about Modern at the moment is almost anything with a functional, cohesive game plan is like tier 2. Right. That's like it really is. Like, if you look at like challenge results, I mean, the only reason you're not seeing someone get in there with blue-red prowess most likely into a top 32 is just because there aren't 5 people playing it, and 5 people playing it would be all it takes. I really I feel that.
Interesting. I think I know the answer to this one, but just to double check, what's your favorite Magic format?
I mean, it's gotta be that one time that I got to make up a format, and it was American Highlander. But no, it's Modern. But American Highlander, for those who are interested, was 60 card Modern format Highlander with no ban list.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Splinter Twin.
Yeah. But you can only play one.
Right.
In your 60 card deck. So I mean, people brought a lot of cool stuff. It was really fun. It was not a format that I felt like people like really tried to game. Because it was for the Faithless Brewing Community League, and they had I think they're still doing that. If you win the league in a season, you get to create one of the formats in the next season. So that was the one I made. It was So,
do you have a all-time favorite Magic deck?
Geez. I think at the moment it's what I referred to as Iceberg, which was black, blue, red, green snow control that I played a bunch last year to reasonable competitive success. I love that deck, and it was based on so in Canada we have a tournament organizer store called Face to Face Games, which if you've looked into events in Canada, they usually run the bigger ones. And there was a face-to-face tournament in Montreal or somewhere where someone had won with this crazy deck that looked totally non-functional, that was playing in Modern 4 copies of Prismatic Vista, 4 copies of the Throne of Eldraine fetch that doesn't hurt you.
Fabled Passage.
Fabled Passage. It was like 4 Assassin's Trophy, 4 Field of Ruin in the 4-color deck. And it just looked so goofy and non-functional, and I'm sure I can look up the YouTube video of the stream where I first played it, and it was just so much fun, and just played a lot of my favorite cards: Ren and 6, Uro, Jace the Mind Sculptor. So I think there was 1 Snapcaster, 1 Kolaghan's Command. I'm a huge fan of legacy player Chase Strifo Hansen. And he's got a deck called Strifopile, and I was like, this is like the Modern Strifopile. It's 4 colors, it's all value, there's a bunch of 1-ofs, and it was just kind of gross. And you had like stack interaction. One of your main modes of like beating people was just to take them off all of their non-basic lands until all they had left was basics, and then sometimes you would Red and 6 emblem and just trophy down all their basics. Well, I don't know, it was great. And I love the card Dead of Winter.
That's
love
amazing.
The card Dead of Winter. It's unplayable now without Arkham's Astrolabe, but
so many other cards are unplayable without Astrolabe, I feel like.
Yeah.
All right, last question for the lightning round. Do you have a favorite Magic memory?
Ooh. Yeah, well, and this will dovetail into the next section beautifully, because one of my favorite memories, it's a little crackly and faded around the edges, because at the tender age of 14 years old, I won a local JSS tournament, which I don't know if you're aware of what the JSS was. It was the Junior Super Series. So it used to be that for anyone 14 or younger, you could enter this tournament series because, Magic knew that they were what it all is, and so
Sure.
for the competitive circuit, they needed to have something for younger people who wanted to compete. I don't know if they needed to; they wanted to at the time, and it gave away scholarships at a higher level. I won a local size tournament for that. I had an invite to the JSS finals in Boston, which I couldn't go to. Me and my single mom couldn't make that happen, but it is what it is. But to win that tournament, I played mono blue control. This was Mirrodin Kamigawa format. My deck had 4 Vidalcan Shackles, 4 Umezawa's Jite. I was playing the Jites not so that I could put it on my creatures necessarily, but because at the time the legend rule would have the opponent's Jite die if you had one in play already, or vice versa. You could use it as a Vindicate for 2 mana.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And in the
Is
finals...
this a standard tournament?
This was a standard tournament.
Okay.
And in the finals, I played against someone who's playing like mono green beatdown. And I know in the last game, it was just super tense. There was a bunch of people watching us. And I know that they got out, it was like turn 3 Iwamori, the Open Fist, which is like a 4-mana 5/5 trample legend that when it comes into play, your opponent gets to put a legendary creature from their hand into play. Mm-hmm. And I happened to have, I think it was a 1 or 2 of Maloku, the Clouded Mirror, which again, all of these cards for newer players, it's just like what are any of these things? But I put that in and I ended up winning off of it, and it was unreal. It was just an unreal day. And like the prizes that I got from it was I got an entire box of each of the next 3 sets that would be released that were just like mailed to my house.
Okay.
Plus eventually a $500 scholarship for university or college. So
nice.
It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. And then it was like the year after that, they dissolved the JSS. No more.
Oh, did you get your boxes at least?
I got all my prizing, but it was.
Oh, that's good.
It's one of those things that I'm always like, damn, that was such a cool thing that existed.
Yeah. Watsy, bring back the Junior Super Series, please.
Or do something for the people who are up to 18 years old, right?
Totally.
Like, there should be something.
I mean, they're going to be the ones that are spending money on your product after they have a disposable income.
Yeah, get them hooked while they're young, right?
That's right. So as long as we're talking about young Zach, teen Zach, I would love to hear about how you first got into Magic and discovered the game or fell in love with it.
Yeah, I definitely remember it. It was in the summer it had to be grade 6 and 7. So I was 11 or 12, something around there. And I was at one friend's house, and then one of his friends came over who was not one of my friends, and said, oh, let's go hang out at my house. I said, all right. So we go over there, and there's another one of his friends there. So now there's 4 of us. And they had this gigantic stack of Magic cards. And I was like, what are these? And they're like, oh, it's Magic. Let's play. And they had, I don't know, a bunch of casual like 100 card decks set up, and we just started like messing around with it. And I don't remember much about that first game. I don't even remember remembering that first game, but somehow from that point it just started like entering in my life, and I ended up going down to the local comic book store that also had Magic cards. Place was called Red Nails 2 in Bloor West Village in Toronto. I think it's still there. I've gone by it recently. I'm pretty sure it's still there. And there was a guy behind the counter who knew how to play. And so eventually I got more of my friends into it, and we would play there every week. Probably multiple times we'd go there, hang out after school, and play with whatever booster pack stuff we had. Scourge was the first pre-release I did, so that was the 3rd set in the Onslaught block. And then we got to see the frame change over to 8th edition and Mirrodin, which was a wild time to start playing. And during that period, the guy at the shop who worked there, we'd do a draft every week, and he would just absolutely flatten us. This guy had flown out to Pro Tour London, like at some point during one of the summers. I think that was with Onslaught Block. But the thing was that I really liked about it was like he was good about explaining how he did it. Like it wasn't like some mystery, and it wasn't like he was styling on us. Like he was just good at the game, and he just wouldn't not kill you if he had the opportunity to do it. But so I learned about the stack, and I learned about all this stuff. And so over the next year, when the Mirrodin sort of era came about, we started traveling downtown to go to actual tournaments, which dozens of people would show up to. But it turns out that we, from knowing this guy, had a better fundamental grasp of Magic than some of the people we met. Now, obviously, Toronto is a super competitive city for Magic. I mean, Dom Harvey usually plays a lot here. Edgar Magalesh, who's been on Arena Decklists, I think back when they were the GAM podcast. Yeah. So like it's the most populous city in Canada, and it's got a lot of high quality players. And so, I kind of fell in love with doing this like weekly competition thing. It was like a thing that I could go out and do on the weekends and feel pretty good about.
Yeah. And have you been playing pretty consistently since that point, perhaps with the exception of your break in college?
So near the end of high school, we didn't, me and my little friend group that all played together, we didn't make it all the way through high school. I think it was like the last year we kind of fell off a bit playing. And I think that was Time Spiral into Lorwyn blocks. Okay. That's where we kind of left the game a little bit. But we had a cube, so we would cube from time to time, and we would add new cards from new sets. And one of my friends really got into it and was and is a very prolific cube content creator. I mean, not content creator, but like he makes cubes. He posts about making cubes. He interacts with the cubing the cubing community on Cube Tutor. Although I believe that website is going down. He's probably moved over to the other new one. But anyway, so. And eventually, after that gap, and then I went to university, and then I started working on cruise ships as a musician, which I will get to in a minute. At some point, I came home on vacation, where I'd be at home for like 2 or 3 months at a time in between contracts. And he said, "Oh, we cube every like Tuesday night." I was like, "Oh, Magic! I haven't played Magic in years." He's like, yeah, come on down. And I came, and I was just like right back in it. It was so much fun. And so I started looking into more, because I've always been the one out of our whole friend group. I was always the one who, if my friends didn't want to play, I would look for other people to play. It wasn't just a social thing for me. It's like when I find a game I love, I love the game, and I will meet strangers and make connections with them to keep playing the game. I was the same with my friend group when we played the online MOBA Dota 2. When they would only play when it was like all of us playing, and I would play the rest of the time. And I didn't care who I was playing with. I really it's just like the game was good. Yeah. Unless you're a jerk, I'm happy to game. And they would move on to other stuff more fast than I would, my friends. And I would tend to stick with the game that I love, because I was like, I'm not done here yet. And most of the games I've ever loved, I've never felt done with. So whatever negatives there are to a game, I'm usually, I don't know if it's like a coping mechanism, or I'm just like, overly invested in it. But like whatever is the ups and downs of the game, I just roll with it. Because yeah.
And that feeling of never being done, I'm sure that suits Magic really well, just because there's always new cards, new formats emerge like every once in a while, new ways to play constantly online or in paper, that I think they do a good job of kind of, latching onto that mindset in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's where I'd like to kick off. Manacymbal, you had 2 decks appear in the same league, 2 league dumps in a row.
Did I? I often am reading through the dumps, and I'm not always looking at the names. And if it's my name, I usually skip over it. But yeah, at the moment, I'm at 7 trophies in this trophy season, and only 2 of them are on the same deck. So that's six of the 7 trophies are on different decks right now.
Yeah, so
I don't think they all got posted, but I know recently. Oh yeah. So there was Esper Reanimator and Nihiri Boom was one of the 2. Because I know someone told me I'm now the Esper Reanimator guy because there was a Channel Fireball article where they pulled of course they pulled my name because it was probably the first name that came up on the Goldfish results.
Mm-hmm.
And then the most recent one was Affinity and Creativity. Yeah, I'm glad I finally got a Creativity 5.0 because I had 4 4-0s into the loss on different Creativity decks, and yeah. So it's really exciting. I mean, I have run my channel on YouTube and Twitch basically the same way since I started, and I was inspired specifically by the departure from the modern format on whole doing the same way of Jeff Hoagland, who transitioned to doing a lot more arena stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was watching a ton of him doing different people's decks, and I was like, well, what's going to happen now that there isn't this? And obviously what's happened is most of the other content creators have picked up doing, whenever there's an interesting lands deck, Fran F. Paulus is going to check it out. Whenever there's an interesting food deck, Doomwake's going to check it out. But at the time I was like, oh, I want to start exploring all these different things. And I happened to be in between contracts in late 2019. So I was like, oh, I'll start up my stream again. I've got 3 months, I'll stream a couple times a week and just like record different modern videos so that people who are interested in them can, they go on YouTube and they go modern this deck and they're looking for someone playing it and that they could find it. So that's where I started from.
Right on.
Yeah. Yeah. So
here's my question.
Yeah, please. Please direct me. For the love of God.
So, you got back-to-back leagues with multiple 5-0s. I'm sure you're getting additional 5-0s because you're on the trophy leaderboard. You're above the fold. Okay.
I am.
I see you appearing in challenge results from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
What does your play point chest and ticket inventory look like?
It's pretty good.
I'm guessing you don't have to put any money into Moto.
No,
to play.
I'm very, very, very comfortably infinite on Magic Online, which is honestly, it's truly astounding to me that I am, considering how much nonsense I play.
Mm-hmm.
I think I balance it out by when I take time to play good decks on stream. I usually win with them. But even. I mean, keeping up the stream, doing a variety of decks nonstop, from the deck dumps, from the challenges, all these different styles of things, and consistently staying above, infinite, 3-2 or better on average.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of those things that, like, one of my friends pointed out to me recently. He was watching me interact with another player who I think is really great. And he was like, yeah, that person's really good at that one deck, but like, look at what you've done here. Like, I don't think you understand like what this is that you've managed to keep up here. Just playing other people's lists nonstop with very little preparation and managing to consistently 3-2 with them. I mean, that is something remarkable. And so I had to kind of come to some level of understanding about, that is an accomplishment, because that maybe not so many people would be able to do it. I credit my teen years when I spent way too much time playing and thinking about Magic and going way too deep on any topic that anyone wrote anything about. So thank you, the Mothership, and I want to say like MTG Salvation at the time.
Sure.
Yeah, those were like the places people would post stuff and we could read about it and go in depth.
So, you mentioned that you will sort of play whatever on stream.
Sure.
And in leagues to kind of experiment with what's new or unusual. But when you play in some of these higher level events, especially challenges, you tend to gravitate toward the Indomitable Creativity deck.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what happened was, since the removal of Arkham's Astrolabe, that killed Urza mid-range decks, that being non-combo Urza decks, and the 4-color snow control deck that I played. And those decks were decks that I enjoyed playing at a more aggressively competitive level. And since that time, I've played a lot of other stuff, but I was waiting for that lightning in a bottle feeling. That's what I've called it on Serum Visions before, where you have a deck that's both powerful and you really love playing. Because this is one of the things I've said a lot on stream. Whenever someone asks me, like, oh, I've got a modern tournament this weekend, I have this deck and this deck, which one do you think I should play? My base default answer is just always, well, which one do you like more? And the reason that is I have just watched in person just way too many times people, in that 1 or 2-1 or even like 2-2 bracket or 3-2 bracket or 4-2 bracket on a bigger tournament, and they're just miserable because they played a deck that they thought was really well positioned, but they hate it or they don't enjoy it. Either way, it's such an investment of time and energy to like go play a Magic tournament. And at the end of the day, I've seen some of the best players in the world like 0-2 drop an event playing the best deck that they thought for a weekend. And it's just like, it's such an important thing to me to actually enjoy the deck you're playing on a given day, that's my default. So looping back to when I found the Indomitable Creativity decks, which I actually have recently looked up the first video where I played it, I was just in love again. It was just one of those decks that just like totally clicked with me. And this was the classic Velomachus turns, 4 Savor the Moment, 4 Time Warp version. And in that first league, I killed people in every way, basically, that deck can do it. I killed them on turn 3 or 4 by flipping a Velomachus into play and hitting 3 Time Warps. I killed people with a Ren and 6 emblem and just looping Time Warp nonstop. I killed people with a hard cast Velomachus, attacked you, Lightning Bolt, hit you for 5. It turned out you were at 8, so you're dead now. It just spoke to me right away. And the guy who made it, Freak You Nasty, is another streamer. So check out Freak You Nasty, the letter U. He streams late night on Twitch. So usually kind of starts up midnight Eastern Standard Time. But he created that deck on that first weekend or the second weekend after his first couple postings and then my streaming it. We both went and played a challenge. He top 8'd immediately and then basically never played the deck again in challenges. I think I top 32'd, but it was like a low top 32. And then people started to notice this deck. And a lot of the streamers and people were like, this is just bad. And so I had this monkey on my back. And it was like 2 months straight that I just was jamming almost every challenge that I could get myself to play. And constantly going X and 2 until finally it was like right after Modern Horizons 2 came out. I had an 8-0 run. Gabe Nassif rated me near the end of it, and that was the top 8 I made with it. And after that point, it kind of got out a little bit more. Zan Syed picked it up, and then the creativity permutations that exist now popped up, partially because of Modern Horizons 2 coming up, partially because we had more eyes on it, we had more creative people working on it than just me. So and then since then, I mean, I guess I'm the creativity guy that people go to. I mean, Zan was playing it all the time. He's moved on to other things now. I'm playing a lot of Arena at the moment, so I'm I guess the only expert left floating around other than Mr. Rabe when you can find him.
What was it about the deck that clicked for you so profoundly?
Oh, well, so you've got a question here about my playstyle, what draws me to my favorite decks. I'm a control player at heart, and I like managing resources and managing the board state and managing the next couple turns in certain ways and looking at strategies that sort of, I'm not interested in killing my opponent so much as I'm usually interested in outgrinding them. We've got a running joke on the stream. I mean, it's not a joke, it's just a running reality that I just miss lethal all the time. If I'm playing a deck that is not about killing your opponent with like reducing their life total to 0. If I'm playing burn, I'm thinking about their life total. I'm trying to kill them. But like there's tons of decks I'll play where it's like, you could have killed them this turn. I was like, how? What are you talking about? It's like, well, they're at 2 and you had that Colligan's command. And I was like, oh yeah, I was trying to kill their 2 creatures and then do this and that and that. And I was like, I could have just killed them. So, and these decks speak to that strength specifically with Ren and 6 being a great backup plan that's just going to carry you through a game and win a game for you in almost all of these different versions. Ren and 6 into Time Warp is basically the biggest end game you can have. No one's going to beat infinite turns. So having a plan that goes way over the top of people, that is always my favorite thing for a deck to have. It's just like the ultimate inevitability. It's like people think Teferi, Hero of Dominaria is inevitable. It's like, no. Bigger. Let's go bigger. That always makes me happy. And then balancing it with they're always under threat. Your opponent is always under siege because at any moment you could put a dwarf token into play off a Dwarven Mine, creativity, and into something horrible, and then they lost the game. The funny thing about this was I missed the Splinter Twin era, but I was describing this for weeks on end, maybe a couple months on end before someone was like, this is a lot like Splinter Twin. And obviously it's a joke normally because we're normally joking about random 2-card combos that aren't actually winning the game. But they were like describing what I was describing about the deck strategy. And I was like, oh yeah, it's not a tempo deck. It's more like a tap out control deck because you're applying these planeswalkers all the time and using a lot of sorcery speed cards. But the fact that your opponent always has to worry about this sudden horrible thing happening, it's super powerful. The card Indomitable Creativity is so amazing because you can't fight it with any kind of like permanent based interaction. I've seen everything tried. And first of all, Grafdigger's Cage doesn't work, but like Ensnaring Bridge doesn't work because you just pump another mana into creativity, target the bridge, and then your opponent's bridge flips into something else that they probably can't use. So for those who are not aware, Indomitable Creativity is X red, red, red. So 3 reds and an X. And you destroy X target creatures or artifacts. And that includes yours and your opponent's. And then you get that polymorph effect where for each thing destroyed this way, each player flips through their deck until they hit another creature or artifact. So in the case of the creativity player, you're only playing the big bombs that you want. But you can kill your opponent's stuff and have it flip into most likely something useless. At the moment, one of the most incredible modes of it is you just target your opponent's Murktide Regent while you're targeting your own stuff. And then it probably flips into a monkey, a DRC, or a 3/3 Murktide Regent, which is nowhere near as frightening as the 8/8 you just removed. So it's such an, like, at the beginning, people were like, just play Polymorph or Transmogrify. Like, it's so much easier on the mana. It's like, no. Like, this is a huge deal. It's huge deal that it's an X. You can target multiple of your own creatures, and then spot removal doesn't blow you out so much anymore. It's a huge deal. Anyway, so the card Indomitable Creativity is really incredible. And then it's turned out that it's become a blast to experiment with. There was a deck that I played that was called Oops All Gear Hulks, where you try to flip into multiple torrential and combustible Gear Hulks with a creativity. So you kind of use the same engine as usual, but you just switch the threat package totally. And that was super fun to play. There's now versions with like 4 Archon of Cruelty where you can pull out like 3 Archon of Cruelty all at once, which is hard to beat.
What's your favorite creativity payoff?
I mean, my favorite creativity payoff is and always will be Velomachus Lorehold. The big beautiful dragon from Strixhaven, the reason that we got here in the first place, when we did. I just love attacking with it and spinning the top 7 of your deck and being like, do we hit a time warp? Is it over? Like, there's just something about that moment where you're like riding that high, and you can do it as early as turn 3. So it's quite powerful.
I feel like your trophies recently have been with Emrakul and maybe other payoffs, though.
Yeah. Emrakul and Sarah's Emissary.
Yeah.
So that is a build, I think, that was pioneered by Mr. Reb that he refers to as Emmycool. I have no idea why. At some point, I'll probably ask him, but maybe it's better that I don't know. But the point of that combination is that it's specifically good against the amount of solitude that's in the metagame right now. So Zan Syed took the list. He didn't like playing the time warps. He took some of the time warps out. He took more of the time warps out. He took all the time warps out. And he was playing a deck with 2 Emrakul. And then elementals started popping up, and you could not beat elementals to save your life. And that's where Sarah's Emissary comes in, because if you get a creativity for X2, you get your Sarah's Emissary and your Emrakul. You name creature on the Sarah's Emissary, and then they can't solitude any of your creatures. And so their only out is to have one of their Teferis immediately bounce the Sarah's Emissary and then solitude your Emrakul. Now, you still have a Sarah's Emissary, so you're not out of it, but you make them work really hard to stop you.
Right. And then do you have like Force and Negation to help? Well, I guess if they have Teferi out, you can't even force them. So
right. Also, more importantly, this deck often plays 4 of its own Teferis. So
gotcha.
If we're talking about creativity decks, the core of the creativity deck is, or some of the obnoxious power of the creativity deck is the same obnoxious power as in the deck I was playing a lot. It was like, I don't know, 6 months before that, which was Niv Mizzet Reborn. I love 5-color Niv to Light. I still have all the cards for it, barring some of the newer releases. And Ren and 6 plus Teferi won me so many games with that deck. In fact, when I played at SCG Columbus, I had 4 Ren and 6, 3 Teferi, 4 Oko, Thief of Crowns. Spoiler alert, that was a really good day. We almost made day 2 as a team. That was a really, really good one. I lost to, what was his name? Nick Jones? Steve Jones? Steve. Anyway, some SCG grinder that I don't know, but my friend knew. That we drew with them in the final round, so we couldn't make day 2. But anyway, so the Super Friends angle of these decks has always appealed to me for whatever reason. I love Planeswalkers. I know I'm supposed to be a boomer because I started back with the old border, and I was kind of away when Planeswalkers got started in, and I missed them taking over. And I just came back to the game, and I was like, these are neat. I like this.
Yeah. Do you think that the creativity deck is like a tier 1 deck power level, or do you think it's just the best deck for you, Zach, to play based on your interests and skills?
I mean, it's definitely the best deck for me to play out of everything that I've played. It's just like nothing feels so good and so slick and like I understand it inside out. I honestly don't know if it would be a tier 1 deck if more people just played it. Mm-hmm. Out of the top 6 decks, so if we look at the modern metagame right now, I'm looking at 6 decks that are tier 1, which is Hammer Time, Jund Sagavan, Blue Red Murktide, the 2 variants of Cascade, and what's the one I missed?
Elementals, maybe?
No, it's not Elementals.
Control?
Yeah, Blue White Control. That's the last one. Blue White Control. So Blue White Control, Sagavan, Blue Red Murktide, the 2 Cascades, and yeah. So out of all of those decks, I mean, the hardest one is Living End, which if we want to touch on, I know there's a question somewhere here about what I think the best deck in Modern might be. I think it might be Living End. I mean, it's just so much harder to convince me that any of these other tier 1 decks are the best one. Whereas like Living End is just like, I feel like every time someone really shows up to play that deck, they just win the challenge with it. It happens more often than anything else, I think. So, I mean, creativity has fine matchups against all the top tier decks. So, and it's got a great linear game plan, which means when you run into someone playing nonsense that you didn't expect, you have a really good chance to win because you just do your thing and they die. And you have the right tools to interact with them between Ren and 6 and Fairy, and most of the random spells you're playing. Hard Evidence helps you against aggro, so you've got a really wide game plan. And that's the other thing I really love about a deck like this is I never ever like to play a linear deck with only one path to victory. I'm the anti-Sodek. Sodek is a pro at playing things like Dredge, where it's like, yeah, they resolve a Rest in Peace and you're in huge trouble. You have no path to victory when there's a Rest in Peace in play. But your game plan is going to be solving their hate in game 2 and 3. Yeah. I'm way more of like the mid-range player where it's like, no, I'll beat you to death with a 1/1 flying snake that drew me a card. And my difficult part is solving all the things you're trying to kill me with. That's where I take the most enjoyment. So like the first deck I came back to Modern to play was Jerry Thompson's Mardu Pyromancer. And I love playing that deck.
That was a while ago. That's what, like 5-6 years ago now?
I think that's where you pulled my first result from. So you had it listed here at some point. You were like, your first listed result on Goldfish was 2017. I think that's what that was. I top forward an SCG invite, one of those satellite tournaments, and I did it with Marty Pyromancer. That was the first competitive, that was the first comp REL event I think I'd ever played, or at least since I was a teenager, which was kind of neat. But Marty Pyromancer, I mean, again, what are you going to kill him with? Young Pyromancer and some elementals. That's basically it. Sometimes Bedlam Reveler,
right?
Yeah. Oh, spirit tokens off Lingering Souls. Absolutely, absolutely. But it's just like a bunch of little crappy creatures. I love doing that. Like it's just a great strategy. It's really funny to have. Like, one of my favorite experiences with the creativity deck is how many times I get to see someone point like an Abrupt Decay or a Terminate at a dwarf token. And I was like, yes, free cardboard. I've never gotten over the articles I read way back when I was a teenager, and card advantage was described as this great, accomplishment in early Magic theory. And I kind of was like, oh, that's what is good in life, card advantage.
That's true. That's usually how I try to play Magic, actually. Is like, how many cards do I have? How many does my opponent have? I'm losing unless I have more. Yeah, I gotta have more. It pains me physically to lose on card advantage. One more question about creativity before we move on from this tangent. Do you ever watch people play and feel like they're either doing something wrong or thinking about the deck incorrectly, that maybe they can learn about it from you and all of your experience with it?
Well, other than the few streamers that I kind of fit into my schedule after I stream or before I stream. So like while I'm at my computer and like I'm in sort of the period of like, I'm going to stream, but I'll watch this person first, or I'm finished streaming and I'll watch this person while I'm doing stuff after. I don't make a huge habit of watching a huge number of streams. So the question, have I, seen people doing this? Not super much. I love the work of Doomwake, and every time he's tried one of these creativity decks, I like pop in. He's like, we drop 2 leagues, and I always come in after the fact. I'm like, what happened? Like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. So one of the I think there is a very definite fundamental misunderstanding that some people have about the deck, about how you're trying to play it. In every game, in every matchup, you're going to have to figure out what is going to stop you from doing your thing, and what are your potential paths to victory. On a larger level, you could always end up winning the game with Random 6. You could always end up winning the game with creativity off the top. But in a practical sense, you have to look at the game you're playing. And it's just, I don't know. It's quite nuanced. The biggest thing I would say, if there's like big early tips, it's like, if your opponent isn't bullying you into, trying to fire off creativity early, take the time to set it up for a situation where you can do it right. But don't be afraid to jam it when you have no other options. I don't know if I can say it much more clearly than that. It's difficult. I've coached one person who asked me for coaching on the creativity deck. We played a league together, and I watched them play their first match, and then I helped them through the second 2. And we went 3-0 in that league. So apparently I'm a really great coach. No, I'm kidding. But it's, it is a tricky deck to play. In Modern, I at some point did a lot of learning of playing Lantern Control and Whir Prison. And the crux of those decks was you have to know every opponent's deck inside and out. On average, you have to know every card that they're going to play against you. And I think once you've gone through like a grinder of playing a deck like that, you start thinking of all these things a little bit more clearly all the time. And maybe it doesn't look like that when I play on stream. Playing on stream is very distracting. Playing in paper Magic is a totally different experience for me. And I don't know. I would have to look at more specific situations for players, but don't feel like you're getting bullied. Always remember, creativity for greater than 1 is like the most powerful weapon that that card brings to bear. You have Ren and 6 to win you games. Depending on the build, you have Jace the Mind Sculptor or Nahiri the Harbinger to, help get you over certain humps. Your cards are super modal. I mean, you're playing Prismari Command, which is a very variable card. You have, in the newer builds, a lot of the time Fire Ice. And don't get hung up too often when you lose. I mean, last night I was playing against Blue Red Murktide, and I played a game, in my mind, I played it very, very well. And I got them to a point where they had one top deck, and then I fired off my creativity, and it turned out it was another counterspell, and I lost the game. And I feel like I made all the right choices, and so I can walk away from that one feeling comfortable. But it takes a long time to get to the point where you can both maneuver a game that way and then lose that way and feel comfortable.
Yes.
One of the hardest things about Magic, and I say it a lot on stream, is that improving is very difficult because it's very difficult to actually isolate like where you made the mistakes, where you made the right choices. So outside of being, results oriented, actually looking at the game you played and asking yourself, did I make the right play on percentages, or did it just end up being the right play? Because you should make the right percentage play all the time, unless you have, some other data. And sometimes they started half casting a spell on Magic Online, and you're like, I know what that is. And then they stopped, and you go, oh, now they're reconsidering. That's a piece of data you have to use in that situation. But anyway, so Magic's tough. Magic's very hard.
Yeah. I've heard that somewhere before. The Magic is hard, but I'm not sure where that was.
It doesn't look like it when you like 5-0, 10-0 sometimes, and it's just like everything swings in your favor. But
so with regard to Modern,
yeah,
you mentioned it's basically your favorite format.
Yep,
and that Modern Horizons 2 helped improve what's your deck right now. Do you think that Modern's in a good place, and really like did MH2 make the format better?
Oh yeah, I think we're in a new golden age of Modern. Like the 90s for Disney, we're just hitting it right. All the musicals are awesome. All the big musical numbers. Animation is on point. No, but with Modern, the beautiful thing about it is that right now we have this fairly well established tier 1 of 6 decks, and we've got Boros Burn and Elementals, who are kind of the I would say like the number one contender upstarts that are sort of the tier 1.5s at the moment, but that could change very quickly again. Elementals seemed like it was going to be tier 1 for a while, and then Greentron came back. And so rewinding the clock a little bit, when MH2 came out, we didn't have any idea what we were dealing with, and it was incredible to go through those first couple months and see every week like a new archetype coming out and just totally dominating a weekend, and then almost immediately being knocked out by someone else. We've gotten to the point now where it's all in balance, but it's a very tense balance. It's like a top tier Cold War, because every time someone shifts some of their sideboard slots, they lose percentage points against some of the other top tier decks. And those top tier decks tend to dominate like the next weekend. However, out of the tier 2 decks, those decks also get to exploit those openings. And so every week, I mean, I'm doing the This Week in Modern show, and I try to highlight what varietal, incredible decks make it into these top 32s of these cutthroat Modern tournaments. And so, as I said before, as long as your deck is built with like a reasonable game plan that's like on the Modern power level, you can compete. So, I see people saying things like, oh, I can't believe someone dusted off their Goblins deck and they're going to play it in a league when people are registering Fury. And it's like, well, yeah, because not everyone is registering Fury, and sometimes registering Fury is a bad choice. Like, you just happen to, stomp this one player, but you don't know how the rest of their league went. Maybe they ran into blue-white control a couple times, and they're playing Cavern of Souls and, Goblin Ringleader, and they just demolished this blue-white control player who thought they were going to have an easy time. It's just so hard to patch all the holes that your deck can have. So, the creativity deck, the worst matchup in the world for me is like Grixis Monkey, like the Grixis Luris Monkey deck, because it's all cheap interaction and counter magic and burn to remove your stuff. It's impossible for me to beat it. It's like impossible, but nobody's playing it.
Yeah.
But when I run into TSP Yendrick playing it, I know I'm going to die. And it feels that way. Like all these top tier decks, they're not unbeatable. And the fact that they need to deal with each other being not unbeatable keeps opening spots up to everyone else. The fact that they are so well understood means that if you are someone like Aspiring Spike, who I have on my monitor over here, muted at the moment, and you understand these fundamental forces that are shifting around, you can try to find these cracks and take a deck that, again, you have to have something functional. You have to have something that in a vacuum plays a good game of Modern. And respects the rules that are around, but those rules keep changing. It used to be, you can't play low cost creatures because everyone's packing like 8 1-mana removal spells, and it turns out that that's just not the case. I ran into Devoted Druid last night. How are they winning? Well, they've got Spellskite in their main deck now. Oh, yeah, that was a real problem for me.
Man, I haven't thought about that deck in a while.
Right. They just kill you on turn 3 sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes they set up Giver of Runes and then a Spellskite and then Devoted Druid, and you remove the Devoted Druid and then they post-mortem lunge it and they kill you. Like, that's a perfect example, right? Or Heliod Company, right? I mean, there are reasons why it's not good right now, but they're not as like solid as people think. So oftentimes people will ask me like, where did deck X go? And I'll say, well, probably people stopped playing it because I guarantee you there's some value to it. And it's probably ready to pop back up anytime. Perfect example, Amulet Titan. Amulet Titan, I think the only reason it's not doing so well right now is nobody's playing anymore because people think it's like poison to touch. But when people do play it, and they understand how the deck works and they understand how to play into this metagame, sometimes they do quite well with it. I think it was House of Mana, I think, top 8'd what was that really big event a little while ago? It was like the Mox Quarterly or something like that. Anyway, there was a pretty good Amulet Titan result recently in a higher tier event. Which again was like 24 players, but still, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So new golden age of Modern. That's the TLDR.
Magic is good again.
Yes, yeah, certainly in terms of Modern. So any jank that you think that has a reasonable shot in Modern, go try it out. Go try it, and don't give up. Do not give up because you owe 3 the first league. Maybe you think it's hopeless, but it's probably not.
Do you set goals for yourself as a competitor? When you sign up for a challenge or even a league, do you go in with like the hopes of a certain finish, or how often are you playing, especially these more competitive challenges, to kind of learn a deck and try to level up as a player?
I think I'm very realistic about myself, which is that I don't know what I want out of these things when I go do them. I didn't know that I really, really wanted that top 8 with the Lorehold deck. Mm-hmm. And once it happened, I noticed that I was playing it a lot less aggressively. And once I had it make it, and that other people were picking it up, I was like, oh, my work here is done. I don't feel like I need to do that anymore. But I didn't really know that until that happened. I mean, I kind of suspected, but anyway. So I find it very difficult to set goals and setting goals for yourself in Magic. I mean, you got to be very careful about that. I never say like, oh, I want to finish this tournament with an X-2 record, because there's just times where that's just not going to happen. So, with content creation, I have like an amount of time I want to put on my stream, and I always want it to be more at the moment because I'm getting real close to that partner hurdle. So that'll be really nice if I can get over that. So that's like my next goal for my stream, but that's been there for a little while, and it's just closer than it's been in a while. So that's exciting. Yeah. But I mean, if you've got a specific deck, getting it to the point where you feel like you've improved it to the best of your ability, I guess that's a goal I have with a deck. If I'm really like running it back to back to back to back, I'm like, oh, I tweak it into these slots. But the fact of the matter is, I know that the metagame's going to change, and that's going to change your decisions about a deck. So sometimes it's a level of understanding. So recently I played Arun Jiggy Wiggy Sing's Grinding Breach deck through a couple leagues because I wanted to re-experience it in its modern form in the current metagame and see, some of what he was talking about, because he's been having immense success with it. He really went deep on that. And I kind of wanted to revisit it because I have played those decks several times in the past. So I knew that day what I wanted to do was go in there and just experience what it was to be in the deck in the metagame at the moment.
Do you have any, specific level up moments as a player, maybe even shifts in how you, evaluate cards during spoiler season, or when people start to play with them and start to innovate with technology that does exist and the synergies people find with it that may have helped you improve over time as a competitor? Because, you mentioned earlier, you credited some of your success as an adult to playing a ton as a kid. And I wonder, is it all practice, or is there actually shifts in thinking that have helped you elevate your play?
So, I did a lot of studying of performance psychology and what it takes to learn to play an instrument on my path to being a musician, because I started late in life and I thought, well, my one advantage is coming at this from a sort of more mature position than when you're learning when you're a kid. And I read a bunch of really, really incredible self-help books and some really garbage ones. But you got to find the good ones. 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, by the way, is a truly incredible read for anyone who's just like heard the name and you're like, oh, it's just another one of those. But no. That is the book. It's written by someone who has a PhD in these self-help literature, spent his entire life, reading, researching this stuff. And then when he was in his 60s, wrote this book. So it is concise and well explained, and probably isn't at all like you think it is. But so with Magic and with music, one of the great parallels I have is pick a single thing you want to improve on and focus on exclusively that for a really good period of time until you see a marked improvement. So, for example, let's take a deck like Niv Mizzet Reborn. One of the most complicated things about that deck is the mana base. And every time you can sit on your own and just goldfish hands and go, okay, with this hand, with these fetch lands, with all the variables I see here, how am I setting up for the rest of my game? And then sort of play through that mentally. And if you run into a problem, go, oh, I got this black source and I have Omnath in my deck. And I drew that Omnath and I didn't need that black source. So, put in those reps, and eventually you're going to get to a point where that becomes a lot more instinctual to you in a given context. But what will happen is if you really invest the time on stuff like that, then you will carry that when you're not consciously thinking of it. That improvement will become natural to you and deeply instilled. And if you do it right, it'll become a really good habit. That's one of the hardest things in the world is breaking bad habits in anything that you sort of learn. If you learn it wrong, it is way harder to learn it right. So try to learn it right the first time. And it's not as easy as just doing it, because with most of these things, nobody's handing you a book of here is the right way to do this, so just follow these steps. No, we don't have that. So you have to sometimes experiment to get there. But, do your best to be, humble about the fact that you don't have a guide that just says this is the one and only way to do this, and then learn to do it this way and you'll be perfect. No, but, so... And that was the thing that happened when I was a teenager is I spent, endless amount of time for weeks on end just building decks and then seeing them fail on fundamental levels. And I wasn't conscious of what I was doing at the time, but it's you spend months and months and months and months playing blue-red prowess. You become really good at finding these mind-bending blue-red prowess trigger lines with pitching and flashing back lava darts and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And usually when you move to another deck, that knowledge of I'm trying to reduce my opponent's life total from 20 to 0 stays with you. That awareness of the gap between that and your winning sticks with you. That's why people have decks that they pick up a quote brand new deck or brand new format, and they're really good at something. Well, it's probably because you put in this work in a very focused way on something similar once upon a time. So that's a great way to improve, is look for a small thing that you can truly hone in, focus on, and then do so for a period of time until you have that marked improvement, and then move on to something else and focus really hard on that. And, you can check back in on them, but it's really, really important. Whereas like sometimes people just jump in with both feet, and that can be really fun, but sometimes you drown because, there's just too much.
Yeah. Good advice. This is why you're such a good coach. I get it. I get it now.
Well, at some point I got to get into teaching. That'd be really fun.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a lot of Magic stuff. Before we truly wrap up for today, I want to talk a little bit about everything that you put out and create for Magic. Mm-hmm. I feel like you're, as I mentioned, one of the hardest working people in the scene right now. It's like you're giving Saffron Olive a run for his money, right? Just
oh, come on.
Because of your outfit. I'm serious. So one thing that I'm really curious about is what motivates you to make like all the individual things that you work on in a given period of time? Whether it's, what motivated you to start the podcast with the Serum Visions gang versus what may have inspired you to start streaming, et cetera, et cetera. The news program, what compels someone to make MTG news?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have a constant drive to create. I sent you the links for them, but
and we'll include links to all of your stuff in the show notes too.
Yeah. When I came back to Magic after cubing with that one friend, and then I went back out on a contract to work for the cruise company. But that was when I started working or sort of interacting with the Magic community online. And one of the first things I noticed was I felt like the resources for new players to learn some of the obvious but trickier things hadn't really improved as much as I thought. So I created this like turn order infographic thing that I sent you. And it basically just explains like, here's all the steps and phases of Magic in a very, as much as possible, kind of user-friendly way.
Yeah.
It ended up being fairly popular at the time. And then when I reposted it a couple years later, when I'd sort of made up the Manacymbal label, or for myself, for my screen name, for my content creation, then it was just as popular then. So it was something that like I felt like I found something that was helpful. I have become a judge since that time, and that's been a way to give back to the community. So there's certainly an element of that where I'm like looking for things that don't exist and going, well, why not me? Why not me be the person who creates that? Because maybe no one else ever will. Someone almost definitely has had the idea, but they haven't done it. And that's such a big deal. It's like, ideas are easy. The execution and just getting off your duff and making something for people, that's the hard part sometimes.
Getting off your duff. Is that a Canadianism?
I don't know, but maybe. Anyway, it's certainly like random and old fashioned, as many of my references are for whatever reason. I mean, I'm just motivated to create because, when you have something like that, it's just important to make it. No one else in the world, and even if someone had the same idea, they wouldn't have made the same thing as you. And that was one of the things that was super powerful to me going through university, was seeing these staggeringly talented musicians and having to compare yourself to them because you're all working on technique, you're all working on, performance, and me just coming to the understanding that, yeah, sure, it's possible I could compete with them on the things that they're great at. And maybe I could even match that someday. But is that really who I am and what I want to do? Because maybe I could have gone down the road of trying to become a world-class performer on the same level as some of these other people. But I think I very quickly came to the understanding that that's not who I am. But what I am is someone who just makes stuff. I make stuff, and I find ways to make stuff, in ways that other people sometimes would be brick walled by. luckily, we're in this age of the internet where almost anything you want to do, you have access to the information right now. So all you have to do is put in the hours. So, when it comes to editing video, I edited audio in university, so I had a little bit of a leg up on that, but still it's been like a lot of learning and, troubleshooting and this, that, and the other. When I see something that exists, and with the This Week in Modern, I was like, we need a sports shouting style show that just covers the competitive stuff, because I'm just shocked that when Magic was supposed to be becoming a top 5 esport, that I never saw this,
Yeah.
And they have great broadcasting personalities, and they never seem to set something like this up. Even SCG didn't really ever do it, and I felt like they were even more positioned to do it. Their coverage on the weekends was great. I mean, it was like everything you would want Magic coverage to be, like basketball coverage, like baseball coverage. I mean, I'm not a big sports fan, but for some reason I'm a big broadcasting fan. I'm just a fan of the news delivery and the broadcasting delivery and coverage of these events. And so, I was always looking at well, why not Magic? And it's a great game for it too. It's like baseball or golf. There's a ton of downtime. I always had it in my head that when, you have a table call with a judge and, the players are talking about something and that the people in the broadcast booth can't really pick it up. And sometimes they transition back to the broadcast booth. And I was always thinking in my mind, it would be great to have one of those real old fashioned baseball, announcers there in the booth being like, well, I remember one time there was a table call. I believe it was in 1997. John Finkel, Johnny Magic himself, was playing Bob Meyer Jr. live in we were adjacent to the Volkswagen Megadome. And at the time they were playing this incredible game. And then, all of a sudden you get the wave from the camera crew. It's like the judge calls over and he's like, and we're back to the action. Obviously that's ridiculous, but it was just this they would do that, the banter, but it's I don't know. I love those trappings.
Yeah.
Ugh, just makes me happy. So I don't know. I just like making stuff. I'm just motivated to make stuff, and it's hard. It's hard to make stuff.
Yes.
It's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to do something like Cards on the Modern Band List, the parody song that I did, all the Simpsons ones. I mean, I'm a huge Simpsons fan. And there are all these songs in The Simpsons, which themselves are parodies of stuff. And so at the time, I didn't want to do any video recording. So I was like, I could take these Simpsons episodes and redub the music over, redub my singing over it, and turn it into a Magic parody song. Obviously inspired by MTG Remy and all the sort of adjacent Magic, parody creators out there in the world. There's a good number of people like that. Independent artists. Billy the Fridge has the Cardboard Crack song. There's Had All D's song. I don't know who that's by, but so there's a few of them out there. And I was like, I have the skill set to contribute to this. Why not? People like this stuff.
Yeah, you might be the only MTG parody artist who went to school for this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess it was in my wheelhouse, so I was like, I guess I owe myself.
Yeah. So when we look at kind of the scope of all the things that you create, be it the music, the podcast, the stream, your news broadcast, what do each of those things do for you as a creator and an artist? What do you get out of the podcast that you don't get out of the This Week in Modern program?
That's a really good question. I mean, This Week in Modern is such a good excuse for me to turn the time that I spend combing through these deck dumps and modern challenges for interesting things into something that other people get to experience. So I've been around the game a long time. I've been around Modern, I'm going to call it a long time now, 4 or 5 years that I've been fairly, hooked in. And so for people who maybe don't have the time or don't have the same level of insight or whatever, that show exists so that they can have that easily digestible, 10-minute hook it to your veins, adrenaline packed injection of what is new and what is happening. And so it was something that I was doing already. And it was just the idea of, if this is valuable to me, it'll probably be valuable to other people. So let me present that to them in a way that I enjoy doing. And then the act of doing it, I get to, figure out all this video editing and all of these, graphics and the delivery of it and writing the script for it. It's very scripted. I mean, it's pretty tight to the script almost every episode. So, versus the podcast, which is a lot more loose, and we get to focus on deck building and experimenting with decks and interacting with a community of people who are interested in that, aspect of Magic. So, yeah. And then, I mean, when it comes to the songs, I mean, they're just a fun, they're a fun way for me to give back, because music is something that most people can just enjoy, and you don't need to know anything about how it's created. I mean, anyone could do what I do there. It would just maybe be a lot more work for them, but working really hard on the rhymes and the writing and the stuff. The Simpsons ones were a little shorter and memeier. The Cards on the Modern Band List, I mean, that's a full length song.
How long did that take you to kind of make, from ideation to execution?
Yeah, I would say like a month. Writing the song took a surprisingly short amount of time. I think I put in 3 really good writing sessions on it, of 2 hours, where I just took all the lyrics of "We Didn't Start the Fire" and set it up next to it and just started writing it out.
Yeah.
And I had the idea in my head that I wanted it to chronologically actually follow along with the history of Modern, which it does, almost like ban for ban, unban for ban. There's a couple times where they're flipped around a little bit, but they're within the same time period. So if you listen to that song from beginning to end, you actually, take a timeline of the Modern ban list, they match up fairly closely. So that was a big motivator for that. So that took like a week. And then the shooting all the different video bits, I mean, this was the first time I'd really done something like that. So I did at least 3 different shoot days over 2 weeks. And then the editing was it was 20 hours.
Right. And then you had other people send you footage too, right?
I did.
You had cameos.
Well, that was a point at which I had enough reach to people in the content creation world.
MTG Cache.
Yes, MTG Cache. I'd graduated from an E-tier Magic E-celebrity to a D-tier Magic celebrity, so I could contact other D-tiers, the biggest D, Dan Shriver, who is Cave Dan Online, who is probably the kindest and has been one of the most motivating people for me to keep doing what I do. So big shout outs to Dan. But he joined in. He had a great time doing that. He was Smithers in my very first MTG parody video. He played the voice of Smithers with the 2 lines. And we had the Tunneling Cat in there and GR Duncan. And I did contact more people who, many of whom were very interested, but they just didn't get me video files in time. But I have my feelers out there for the next time that I need to do something like that, because it's great to meet these people and almost everyone I've met in the content creation world. Everyone I've met in the content creation world has been great.
Hey, I'll act for you. If you need a star,
you got it.
A face and a voice.
Yes.
I can be that person.
You got a good voice.
Oh, get out of here. Get out of here.
Yeah. We got to change up that last name though. Islov? Stan Islov? I don't know if America's buying that.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
They've embraced me reluctantly.
Yes,
America
that's
has.
all right. Yeah. I don't know if Ryl was my family's original last name, and my Opa doesn't talk about the old days, so
So I do know that you are, or at least I've heard that you're a full-time musician outside of Magic.
So I'm not at the moment. I was on contract work for 5 years with a cruise company, and so that would mean going out for 6 to 7 months at a time, working on a cruise ship, and then coming home for a couple weeks and figuring out when my next contract was going to be. And I've done that job since I graduated from university. In fact, I was hired before I graduated, which is one of my favorite fun facts to tell people, and I'm sure I'll be telling young people for the rest of my life, is when I was going through high school, people were like, oh, you got to get a degree, you got to go into business, you got to get a doctorate or something. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So when I finished high school, I went and worked for a while. I worked for Starbucks for 3 years. But I had a passion for music, and I said, well, what if I did that? And I started super late. I started, actually picking up an instrument properly at the age of 19. That's when I started playing drums. And I went to university at the age of 22 after about 3 years of, practicing 2 to 4 hours a day, plus tons of, supplemental work of this, that, and other variety. And when I went, I didn't take it for granted. I wasn't just there because. I was there because I intended to be there and because I'd put in the work to be there, which, talent-wise, skill-wise, I was way behind a lot of these kids coming fresh out of high school, because some of them have been playing since they were like 5. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to make a living doing it, because since I started doing it, I was totally in love with it. And so the crazy thing about it to me was, I saw people graduating with these business degrees or anything more practical, and not being able to find work because they didn't really love it, maybe. I mean, that's what it really felt like to me, because if you really loved it, you would have been doing more stuff during university. So like being a musician, it's kind of easy in a way to do more than just the classwork, because nobody even wants to do the classwork. Just passing your classes is not much of an accomplishment. Like, I mean, it is, and you should be proud of that, but no musician is ever not working on outside projects when they're in university. I mean, that's the whole point of it, to actually be out there working all the time. And so, you see people who are just doing their classwork for these other degrees. And it's like, well, it just doesn't work like that. You have to do more. If you want to immediately get a job doing what you love, I think it's not a clear parallel, but anyway.
I think that resonates with me and my journalism degree. Like I just did a ton of writing on the side.
Right. If you had a journalism degree and you're doing your classwork, right, you also probably want to be like doing some journalism outside the class. No one's stopping you. They don't care that you have a degree. I did so much journalism. Right. No one could stop me from doing more journalism. Right. And well, that makes sense why you're doing this right here. So so music was, and then they were going around to the different universities, the cruise companies, because they know that's where to look for people. And so they had an audition. My audition was 15 minutes. That's it. And then I was hired for this cruise company. Just a 15-minute drum solo? 100%. Yeah. No, I had to play along to some charts and do some sight reading, and I got to bring a song of my own, not written by me. In this case, I picked Ghostbusters, just because like I've got a good live performance energy, and I thought that was something that they wouldn't see a huge amount of from some of the university candidates, which I think I was right. There's a lot of people who are more into the music as art with a capital A. And they're exceptional performers in terms of their technical ability and the musical expression. But they're not quite as entertaining to watch or, listen to maybe. So, and I know that that's something I can do. Yeah. So, you mentioned the drums. Your name is Manacymbal on Twitch. Is drums and percussion your primary instrument? Yes. Yeah. In fact, because of you writing out these questions beforehand, I brought out my snare drum from my storage unit. Wow, it's a snares there on the bottom. So beautiful. For anyone who doesn't know how a snare drum works, you can hear my snares vibrating right now as I put them reasonably close to the microphone. And that's how a snare drum does its thing. And then you wrote me a question about my favorite cymbal. Wow, this is real show and tell stuff right now. Zach, our listeners can't see your gear. I know. But I can describe with my voice. Cave Dan once described that there's an art to it. So we've got this beautiful bronze cymbal. And so this one is not my favorite cymbal. It's this one. So this is a hi-hat pair, 15-inch Dream hi-hats cymbals. This is a Canadian company. And the one on top is my favorite because it's the one I hit. So that's how you know I love you. No, I'm kidding. There you go. So I've got a bunch of I just pulled out my cymbal bag out of storage just to take a look at it all because you had the question.
I love music too. I used to be like very involved in the music scene. I worked in the music industry, and I wrote about music and documented a lot of it. Do you? And I know this is a Magic podcast, but as long as we're on the topic,
no, go nuts.
Do you have like favorite drummers, favorite bands?
Oh yeah. Well, so favorite bands since I discovered them, and I kind of discovered them when I was like before I got into music, and then the more I got into music, the more I was blown away by them. Is Dream Theater, and I'm so because when I was a teenager. Yeah, they're progressive metal. Like they have like very acousticy songs that sound very acousticy because they have a world class piano player, Jordan Rudess, who was not an original founding member of the band, but the original founding people. They're Berkeley guys who were just like totally in love with like prog rock and metal. And so when I was a teenager, I loved all the big four of thrash metal: Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth. And I loved Iron Maiden. And my dad got me into AC/DC, so that got me down the road of harder music. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because since I became a professional musician, I've kind of looped around to enjoying a ton of like disco and older pop from like the 60s and 60s and 70s and 80s. Anything that's like got that really tight studio feel. I just absolutely adore that. There's an entire genre of Japanese music called city pop that I really enjoy. That's kind of from that era. Favorite drummers, Billy Cobham, who's like the world's first fusion drummer, who is the drummer for a group called the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Oh, I love the Mahavishnu Orchestra. I have some of their records.
With him and John McLaughlin is just unreal to listen to. And then he's also a composer, which to me was kind of inspiring because I was like, oh, it's a drummer who's a composer. And so, I've written some of my own music and recorded it as well. So it was nice to know that. Simon Phillips is another fusion guy who's very similar to that. He's currently the drummer for Toto. After their drummer passed away, I think he was the immediate one who picked up, but he also has been around a long time. So the rock scene just being like a stand-in for basically everyone. He recorded with Jeff Beck, a bunch of Jeff Beck's big albums. And he also plays in a fusion trio, let's call it, with a Japanese piano player called Hiromi. And those albums are unreal. Voice, and I can't remember the name of the second one. I want to say it's called like Flashback or something like that, but that's not right.
I haven't listened to Mahavishnu in such a long time, and I'm remembering Birds of Fire being like the album that got me into the band.
Yep. Yeah, Birds of Fire, and the one before that, which is The Inner Mounting Flame. Mm-hmm. Those are the two. Those are the two albums in my opinion, because I think they changed a lot of personnel after those ones, and they're just not the same style, which is fine. Yeah. It's just one of those things. It's like I like them from this era, and I don't like them so much from other eras. I'm a long-haired, glasses-wearing Canadian, so I have to like Rush, but I actually love Rush. From their first album until Signals, that's an incredible era, and then the middle 80s is kind of something else, and then they've got some good songs on the album since they came back. So rest in peace, Neil Peart. You may have been one of the greatest contributors to drumming that has ever lived. You're right up there with your big guys, your Gene Krupas and your Buddy Riches.
Wow. That was a good digression into music. We don't usually get to talk about like that type of stuff on these bonus episodes. I'm glad we did. I feel like I can talk to you all day. This might be one of our longest bonus episodes. It's like this one and the episode I did with the pen sword, Jacob.
Oh, Jacob.
Now he's back.
He's back and he's big, man. He's crushing it. I was so lucky to create a connection with him near when he left. Mm-hmm. And then when he came back, I've just been so happy to see him hit a level of success that he immediately has. He's tearing it up. If he's not the trophy board leader, he is one trophy away. And Brazilian Capoeira 02 is is giving him a run for his money with that one. So again, America versus Brazil in this trophy race.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, we love Jacob. He's so nice and funny and genuine.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not only was I thrilled to see him playing again, but that he was actually taking the time to stream and work on Blue Moon and innovate from a really happy place too. Like I think he's a positive force for Magic, not unlike yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. I mean, that's all I try to be. You know, I try to be a good force within the content creation world, and you know, share as much good information as possible. That's where I come from. And if you've got a crazy idea, as long as you're realistic about it, you know, your crazy idea is probably not going to take the top tier by storm. Then you know, you can make it work and enjoy it, and you don't need to compete with the biggest things in the world just to be happy.
Where can people find you? I mentioned there's going to be links in the show notes, but
Yep.
You know, some people don't want to read the show notes. Maybe they just want to listen and transcribe.
Yes. Well, everything, I've made it very, very simple. I think it's very important if you're getting into content creation to try to do this. Everything is Manacymbal. Symbol spelled like the instrument, Cymbal. So at YouTube, at Twitter, and at Twitch, all Manacymbal. Super straightforward, super easy. And then there is technically a This Week in Modern Twitter and Gmail. So those exist separately. So it's TwimMTG and This Week in Modern at gmail.com. That's always in those episodes. So you can find that there. And then Randy Rootwalla has his own Twitter as well as TikTok. And Randy Rootwalla has sent both a beef TikTok to Aspiring Spike, which he played on stream, and a motivational TikTok to him that he played on stream during the end of the trophy race. Twice at least, which was really funny.
That's amazing.
So I'm 1 degree of separation from Aspiring Spike now that I've been on the dive down.
Man.
Someday I'll be successful. Someday.
Hopefully sooner than later. You deserve it.
I hope so.
Well, thank you again, Zach. That does wrap up this bonus episode of The Dive Down. If you haven't yet, make sure you check out Manacymbal wherever books are sold. Find them on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and onward. If this is your first time listening to The Dive Down, make sure you subscribe and get the latest episodes as soon as they come out every week. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. You can also check out Manacymbal on the Serum Visions podcast on the internet, and I think on vinyl. I've seen you guys press like the yellow and blue vinyl.
It's actually on shellac.
160 gram.
Of a vinyl shortage right now. So, you know, we couldn't afford it in the first place. So, I think that's what they were pressing in World War II. I think there was a vinyl shortage, so they were pressing on the shellac.
If you'd like to submit a question to The Dive Down or reach out to us in general, you can find us on Twitter at The Dive Down, all one word. You can even email thedivedown@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our show, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown. Of course, shout out to Manatraders for sponsoring our podcast. Sign up for Manatraders using promo code TheDiveDown2021, all one word. Get 15% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. Zach, do you have a Manatraders account?
I do. I've loved having a Manatraders account for 18 months now, and on my stream I always shout out that it is my preferred way to rent Magic the Gathering cards. I've been on their coverage for their tournament a couple times, and I have emailed back and forth with them a number of times about being sponsored. I haven't quite gotten there yet, so maybe the Dive Downers as a unit can nudge me over that hill. Who knows?
We'll try. Manatraders is the best. You heard it here first.
They are. Absolutely.
Manacymbal uses it, so do we. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next time, go find Manacymbal.